Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of my video essay series on Sergei Prokofiev's score to the 1938 film Alexander Nevsky, directed by Sergei Eisenstein. In this episode, I will be talking about the production of the score. The topics of recording and compositional symbolism will be covered in this video. In his lifetime, Sergei Prokofiev scored 8 motion pictures, though only 4 have been recovered. Before Alexander Nevsky, he composed the scores to Lieutenant Kihei in 1934 and The Queen of Spades in 1936. After Nevsky, he wrote the score to his last film, Ivan the Terrible, in 1942, once again collaborating with Sergei Eisenstein. During his collaboration with Eisenstein, Prokofiev had left his mark on cinema with groundbreaking scoring and recording techniques. During the scoring process, Prokofiev put a lot of effort into making sure the musical storytelling was cohesive and would write his score around the editing to make certain transitions between scenes to be musically seamless with the score, elevating the film to a much higher level. As the people of Novgorod await the inevitable battle on the ice, we hear a very creepy and foreboding texture within the orchestra. But the moment the frame changes and the Teutonic Knights start their charge, the music emulates their movement by increasing in tempo, intensity, and rhythmic activity as the threat gets closer to our heroes. Following in the Wagnerian art of the leitmotif, Prokofiev assigns musical identities to different characters, places, ideas, and cultures to give the work a structural cohesiveness. Aside from micro-editing the score to the film, Prokofiev had also experimented with different microphone placements. Even though it is not notated in the score, he had moved the microphone intentionally closer to the horns to get a sort of ripping sound effect that provides a dreadful, harsh, and distorted sound. A tradition Prokofiev helped start was the act of taking a film score and reducing it into a smaller work to be enjoyed at concerts. In this case, he had reduced the score into the 7-movement Opus 78 cantata. An example of this tradition living on today is John Williams' Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone Children's Suite for Orchestra, in which he took 9 themes from the mentioned film and turned them into an orchestral suite in which children could hear the story told through the music and narration. This work is very much a magical nod to Prokofiev's own Peter and the Wolf. Due to the film being a piece of Soviet propaganda, we see socialist commentary not just in the film itself, but within the music. Nazi Germany was on the rise during the production of this film, and all of the world's superpowers were slinging mud at one another between the Allies and Axis powers. In early filming, the Teutonic Knights had swastikas, and even in the finished film, the helmets of the invaders have been likened to the German Stahlhelms from World War I. On top of this, it was heavily implied that Nevsky himself was supposed to be synonymous with Stalin within the story, otherwise known as the hero of the people. In order to represent this musically, Prokofiev had to write music that conformed to the Soviet ideology. This meant that his writing had to be neo-romantic, likening to composers like Tchaikovsky, and had to avoid dissonances that do not resolve. The invaders are given a very dark and vicious musical identity that starts off with a low, rumbly melody in the bass end of the orchestra and followed by a chanting men's choir. In contrast, our hero, Nevsky/Stalin, is given a nostalgic, warm, and triumphant theme. This theme is usually represented mostly by the choir, as if emulating the singing voices of the grateful people. In the climax of the work, we enter the battle on the ice, which went on to be a major influence both musically and practically for large-scale cinematic works moving ahead, such as the Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Empire Strikes Back. Prokofiev wasn't just making a film score, he was making history. One of the most memorable film scenes in all of cinema is arguably the Battle of Hoth during the 1980 film The Empire Strikes Back. What's most noticeable about it is its barren snow landscape. It has a sense of hecticness to it as we see the Imperials, coming against the rebels, invading them essentially. And this is an idea that was very clearly taken from the battle that we see here as the Germans are invading the Russians. When making the score to Alexander Nevsky, Sergei Prokofiev did not hold back on instrumentation. Using a huge orchestra, he had prioritized musical effect over a condensed orchestra. With the instruments noted, we notice that he has an extensive percussion section, obscure orchestral instruments like the alto and tenor saxophones, and a small ensemble of 2 horns, 2 trumpets, tier horn, and a tenor flugelhorn. All of this is layered over a Mahler-esque romantic orchestra and massive choir. Solo vocalists do make appearances. One of the biggest parts about this score is its texture. The texture in the film can get very dense, especially during the climactic battle on the ice. But the way that Prokofiev uses the themes of the film to intertwine, such as the Song of Alexander Nevsky, or the very low and foreboding leitmotif for the Germans, it all kind of comes together during this battle. And it turns out to be a very polyphonic, dense, rich, and active texture. Once the heroes finally start to prevail, we hear a very, very triumphant theme come in to, kind of show that the Russians are winning. And it plays into that Soviet propaganda because the good guys, they have to have a really happy, triumphant theme. We want to make sure that the audience knows exactly who the good guys are and that we should feel happy for them winning. In the last part of this series, I will be exploring the themes that Prokofiev had used in this film a little deeper, as well as going over the 7-movement cantata and showing how all of it ties together, pointing out little discrepancies and little intricacies within each individual work. I will see you in the next part.